We now continue with part 2 of this broadcast, Adventure, Savage Beast, with CBS News correspondent Charles Kuralt.
They are shaggy beasts with sharp, curling horns, the muskox. This is the animal prehistoric man drew on the walls of caves, perhaps to thank the muskox spirit for his meat and wool. Legend tells us that the muskox is the wildest of the wild, the most dangerous animal, and the bearer of the golden fleece. These men are here to capture the muskox, to tame him, and to turn the frozen tundra into ranch land. The idea is to make the muskox do for the North Country what the longhorn steer did for the American West a century ago. Capture him, domesticate him, selectively breed him, and then sell his superb underwool, finer than any other known in nature, to the world markets. Wild muskoxen, now tame, on the grounds of the University of Alaska, waiting for the next adventure in their million-year history. On this farm in Alaska are wrapped up the life and career of a man and the future of a people and a region. Obviously, it's no ordinary farm. The animals which graze here are not cattle or sheep. They are muskoxen. They were born on the frozen tundra of the Arctic, wild, like their ancestors for thousands of years. It was the challenge of one man to capture them and tame them and turn them to pasture. It was a formidable task. John Teal is a formidable man.
Let's go back a bit. It is 1954, and John Teal has a dream. The place, the Barren Lands of Canada's Northwest Territories. For the first time in 6,000 years, a human being is going to domesticate a wild animal. Teal has permission from Canada to capture 7 muskox calves, provided he kills no animals in doing so. In the past, the only way to capture calves has been to force the adults into a defensive huddle, then shoot them all to get at the calves in the center, for the adults have a reputation for terrible ferocity. The plane hunts. The men and the muskoxen parry and thrust below. Here is the game. Break up the herd's impregnable defensive huddle by outbluffing the tons of horned and angry flesh. Drive them forward, a fence of men blocking the escape route. Drive them to a point of land, into the water, where the herd instinct dissolves. Find a calf. Then go into the nearly freezing water yourself. And John Teal goes in. The first calf ever taken this way is captured. In the past, a capture usually meant mounds of dead and wasted life, all adults killed, and one calf as a prize for a zoo. This time, this calf is on its way not to bars and a cage, but to a farm, to become the first in a new breed which will extend modern man's habitat deep into the far north. The farm is in Vermont, not usually considered part of the Arctic, but it is, geologically at least, subarctic. The favorite food of the muskox, willows, grows here, and the 150-pound little fellow is weaned. It happens quickly. The animal the Eskimos call Umingmak, the bearded one, becomes, with 6 others Teal has captured in Canada, more tame than the family cow. Centuries of myth and legend dissolve before the truth. The ferocious muskox, which is not an ox, but somewhere between a goat and an antelope, and has no musk glands, is not truly ferocious either.
It swims in the family swimming hole, sometimes with the family. When it is grown, it completely trusts John Teal with its young. But these are simply tame wild animals, and John Teal, who is a scientist, an Arctic ecologist, has something better in mind for the muskox. How in the world did you get interested in such a subject? Making a domestic animal of a wild beast.
Well, my principal interest, oddly enough, isn't completely in muskoxen in this line. Perhaps what I really hope is that other men in other zones and places will get the idea of domesticating the animals and plants in their natural environments and will carry on this work for the general benefit of people. It strikes me that man has, for 4,000 years, dragged around a small handful of south-temperate tropical animals and forced them into his new locations, and more often than not has destroyed the environment as well. The same with his crops. And I think it's important that we, as a species, start considering the general ecology of the whole Earth, how to preserve its environment. And in the Arctic, this means taking advantage of the animals of the Arctic for economic purposes. And the reindeer is already domestic, and that leaves only the muskox to work on. The mammoth perhaps would have been the best of all, only he has made himself somewhat unavailable lately. For 200 years, men have been thinking about domesticating the muskoxen for its wool. And it's our good luck to have been the ones that started it.
It is now 1964. When John Teal married her, he took Penelope Teal on a long honeymoon sleigh ride through Lapland. Now he's taking her to Makoriak on foggy Nunivak Island in the Bering Strait. For 10 years, he has studied the muskoxen in Vermont, breeding them selectively. They are now having young each year. In the wild, this happened only every 2 years. Now he's going to find the beginnings, not of another laboratory herd, but the breeding stock of a wool-bearing farm animal which will revolutionize the lives of the people of the North. From Makoriak, they go 20 miles to Nash Harbor, where Eskimos have come for centuries to fish and hunt, to survive and to die in their long challenge of the Arctic. It is August. The short summer's almost over. Our Lady of the Muskox, the party calls the abandoned chapel. Teal has 4 short weeks to take 20 calves. The party has devised a special non-slipping noose at the end of a pole that won't tighten too much around a calf's neck when they capture him in the water. The same plan holds. Drive the muskox herd into the water with an airplane above and men on the ground. Cut a calf from the herd, take the calf alive. The plane, delayed by fog, arrives. The hunt begins with a rehearsal. There are only 700 muskoxen scattered over Nunivak's 1,700 square miles. 700 of the last 14,000 muskoxen left in Alaska, Canada, Greenland, and Scandinavia. The last left on Earth, where they were once as numerous as bison on the Great Plains. The party will follow the scenario John Teal wrote years before. The men will make a living fence. The airplane will search for a band of animals. Together, they will drive the band into the water. A canoe will be ready for the capture. At first, the herd is nonplussed, or whatever muskoxen are, when they find that men do not run from them, shoot them, or snarl at them like wolves. Wolves and men are the muskox's only enemies. Teal's plan calls for outfacing the big 800-pound adults, outbluffing them. The muskox is used to crushing opponents who come near or dying on the spot. It has no fear of low-flying planes and has even been seen to leap up and try to gore a passing aircraft. The animals break. Now the job is to keep them together, moving toward the sea. But Nunivak Island is not the Northwest Territories, where there are lakes and ponds and potholes by the hundreds of thousands. Nunivak is solid land and open range. Safety is everywhere for the muskoxen. Danger in only one direction, the sea. And the animals are not very eager for that direction, perhaps because the sea is so very cold. It is the beginning of the expedition's frustration. When the hunt begins in earnest, it is no more lucky than the rehearsal. Precious days of what is left of the short Arctic summer, more precious hours of flight time stolen from Nunivak's fogs, are draining away without a capture. On one morning alone, the men will run, walk, jog, stumble, and tumble 12 miles without rest over hills and ridges on Nunivak Island, which is no bridle path, except for the tireless and nimble muskoxen. Clearly, the muskoxen, known for their uncanny intelligence, must have been running their own scientific studies on John Teal. They just won't go near the water. And it becomes a question, will John Teal domesticate the wild muskox, or will the muskox drive John Teal wild? The adversaries are stalemated on a ridge high above the sea. The muskoxen await the expected attack, ready to die. But the weapons are still clods of earth, lightly tossed, just something, somehow, to get the animals who, as ever, are huddled around their young, moving again. And they do move, but not where the men want them to go. The days go on like this in many different parts of the island. Several times, the quarry races right through the Nash Harbor camp itself. It is August 14th, and John Teal is losing his gamble of a small and diminishing foundation grant against the challenge that he can bring the muskox alive and kicking into the 20th century to join the human race as a partner in a new adventure. The summer is going fast, but when a thaw sets in, if you can imagine a thaw in summer, this means that the seawater is a little warmer and the men's strategy may finally work. They may get the muskoxen into the sea. And on August 15th, at last, it does happen. They have their first calf. What kind of emotions on shore? They let the big one, which they didn't want, get away. They are scientists and naturalists. Do they feel like successful hunters? Perhaps the difference is that the great moment of the hunter ends with the kill. But this small, wet, and alive calf is still a part of the unpredictable future of what can still be learned and what can be done. The calf is tucked aboard the plane, bound ultimately for a pasture in Fairbanks. John Teal is jubilant. The barber is Pamela, Teal's daughter. The party is idle, waiting for the airplane to return from the mainland. 2 more calves have been captured. The party amuses itself with fishing, but this is not catching muskoxen. It is very slow going, trying to outwit an animal on its own ground, something man always thinks he can do, but seldom really manages. So Teal does what man has always done. He finds, or invents, a tool, a piece of technology that changes the whole situation. An arrow, a spear, a computer. This time, the tool is the helicopter. The secret is the threat from above. The muskox, which will defy an airplane, has never apparently felt a wind, the helicopter downdraft, from above. The helo pilot has worked this way with rhinoceros in India, and it was effective there too. The frightened herd is scattered. The cows and calves seek safety in the sea, or they try to hide in the low and rolling tundra, where the calves can be thrown and roped. From now on, the technology works out. Muskoxen are taken with industrial precision, almost anywhere on the island, land or sea, 3 a day. The new tool has completely changed the situation. The ratio of sexes is what Teal needs, too. 4 females to 1 male. The cattle herds that once filled the Great Plains, he says, were built on a similar ratio. The calves will be given injections before leaving, shots against pneumonia, and a sedative to prevent shock. The quota is 20, and the young and perishable cargo is carefully packed, shipped by boat to Makoriak, from there by air to Fairbanks, a transportation that is more than a crossing of space. For with these calves, from their genes and chromosomes, Teal hopes to transform the muskox from wild beast to farm animal, and the life of the Eskimo and Indian from nomad and hunter to rancher. This is the challenge John Teal has set for himself and the little bearded ones, who are at first reluctant to become his colleagues, but in a day or 2 are converted to the scientific method. Calves easily become tame, but tameness is not necessarily a trait of domestication. In Spain, bulls are bred for fierceness, for example. Domestication places stress on purpose. Dairy cattle for milk, beef cattle for meat. Most of our domestic animals, Teal says, were originally tropical. We've taken them everywhere, breeding them to fit the climate. The muskox, however, is already an efficient Arctic animal. It needs no barns or special feed, just the grass of the tundra. It is already in harmony with its environment. By 1969, Project Muskox is ready to allot small herds to native settlements. What do you hope is going to come of these many years of your work?
The only thing that remains now is to see how many people we can get making their livings, perhaps having decent lives because they are at last off welfare, as most Arctic people are. In other words, it's now merely a matter of time to see the animals spread to come into general use. There are many, many coastal villages with no source of income at all anymore. And in societies in which a man was evaluated not so much by personal property, usually had none, but by how much he contributed to the group. Being on welfare is a horrible experience. They are, of all people, the most desperate to get off welfare. Therefore, they're quite anxious to have a new resource, one that's natural to them, presented to them, so that they can make a decent living and a decent life.
And here it is, the new resource, Kiviot, the golden fleece of the muskox, softer than goose down, finer and stronger than cashmere, and for thousands of years simply blown about by the Arctic winds. It is the undercoat of the muskox, grown in autumn close to the skin, shed in summer when the animal needs less warmth. There isn't even a need to clip Kiviot. It is pulled off like a sweater, 6 pounds to the animal. The cashmere goat gives only 3 ounces of fleece, and Kiviot fibers are longer. 1 pound spins into 25 miles of yarn that will make 2 or 3 of the lightest and warmest sweaters in the world, dye fast and shrink-proof. Project Muskox aims at making the northern natives not only raw material producers, but also people who profit from the final product. They will knit the Kiviot into sweaters, ski clothes, and evening stoles. Ann Shell, a textile designer from Massachusetts at the University of Alaska.
We haven't retailed any scarves yet. John Teal has taken them back east and is contacting the buyers in stores like Lloyd & Taylor and Brooks Brothers, the big exclusive stores. Still need more knitters. We'll have to get more than one village knitting scarves. We felt that having you women here to see what we're doing with the Kiviot and what the knitting lessons are like, we could then reach more villages quicker than going out ourselves.
John Teal talks of acceptance and social change. These Eskimo ladies are also American women. They love their refrigerators, a warm house instead of a tent or an igloo. Yet their husbands, at the core, are hunters. Hunting is the base of their self-esteem, of an Eskimo's worth as a human being. And Eskimo women, too, usually like to go on the trail in the spring. The men hunting, the women fishing, the children learning something of the old ways while the earth is thawing and painting itself in all the brief, bold joys of spring. This is their way. It's hard to give up forever. But times and life are changing. The Eskimos have no tradition of knitting, but they are superb makers of clothing. These women will become instructors. Alaskan Eskimos are studying animal husbandry at the university. Canada now has a muskox herd. Iceland, Norway, Russia are interested. Umingmak, the muskox, almost extinct 30 years ago, now seems here to stay.
Sweater, just like you'd buy in the store. You can feel how soft it is.
One of the really great things about the muskox is its intelligence mixed with a keen sense of play. He plays pushball, nuzzles cameras, opens doors, even, Teal says, picks locks. Another quality showed itself early, a capacity for affection. Once, when Teal's first herd had grown large, a strange dog came by. Perhaps the dog looked like a wolf. Quickly, the animals formed their defensive huddle, ready to repel attack, and in the center, protected like their own calf, they put John Teal. Could anything nicer ever have happened to a man? This simple domestic scene, muskoxen mothers caring for their newborn calves, is a rewarding sight to John Teal. Against history's odds, he may have altered for the better the future of an ancient animal and an ancient people. Someday, you will buy a Kiviut sweater made in an Eskimo village. When you do, John Teal's work will be over and his challenge met.